Morning, everyone. I call to order the December 10th, 2025 Planning Commission hearing at 9 a.m. We are meeting in the Manzanita Hall at 500 County Center as well as via Zoom. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Fox, you're on. Please proceed with the oath of office for new commissioner, Mr. Matthew Burrows.
Stand and raise your right hand. You have a preference about whether you want to swear or affirm. You have a choice.
I will.
Okay, we can do that.
Matthew.
I have to say it first and then you repeat. I state your name.
Matthew Burrows.
Do solemnly swear. You have to repeat after me.
Oh, do solemnly swear
That I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely
That I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge
That I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you and congratulations.
Could I say just a quick?
On the mic, please.
Okay, sure. I just wanted to say a few quick words about the person whose term that I'm filling, Lisa Ketchum. So unfortunately, I was not able to meet Lisa personally, but with our many mutual friends and acquaintances, I know how deeply respected and admired she was, and what a resource and mentor she was to so many people on the Mid-Coast and San Mateo County. So I just wanted to just pay a quick tribute to Lisa for the wonderful person that she was. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Welcome to the Planning Commission. We look forward to working with you alongside you. Madam Clerk, please proceed with the roll call.
Commissioner Burrows,
Here.
Commissioner Garcia.
Here.
Commissioner Gupta,
Here.
Commissioner Nugent,
Here.
Chair Serrano Kwan.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum and staff is represented by Monowitz, Fox, and Gonzalez. Thank you.
We will now open public comment for items on the consent agenda and items not on the agenda. This meeting is a limited public forum. All public comments must relate to something that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of this agency. If a comment does not relate to the subject matter jurisdiction of this agency, we will interrupt your comment and move on to the next speaker. As presiding officer of this meeting, I will determine whether a comment does not relate to the subject matters placed within this agency's purview. Madam Clerk, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I will first call upon members in person, followed by speakers on Zoom. For in-person comments, the speakers are located in the back of the room. On Zoom, please use the raise hand feature or *9 if you are calling by phone. And as a reminder, this is public comment for items not on the agenda or items on consent agenda. And I do have 2 virtual hands raised on Zoom. So I will first call on Melinda McNaughton, followed by Barbara Beard. Melinda, go ahead.
Hi, I just
You
wanted to make sure. I was going to be speaking about item 3 on the agenda. Does that apply?
No, this is for items not on the agenda.
Okay, sorry, never mind.
No problem. And the rest of the hands, Chair, went down, so I assume we have no further comments for items not on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now close public comment for items on the consent agenda and items not on the agenda. Is there a motion to set the agenda and approve the consent agenda, which includes item number 1, minutes from the November 12th, 2025 meeting?
So moved. I second.
Commissioner Burrows?
I think it would be appropriate for Commissioner Burrows to abstain since he wasn't at the last meeting.
Thank you.
Commissioner Garcia?
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta?
Aye.
Commissioner Nugent?
Aye.
Chair Serrano Kwan?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 4-1.
We will now move on to item number 2. Madam Clerk, please introduce the project and the planner.
Owner, Golnick Joshua, applicant Water Solution, Inc., file number PLN 2025-00081, and your project planner is Kanoa Kelly.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is the second item, and this project is for a coastal development permit, a PAD permit, and architectural review for the drilling of 2 test wells located just west of Cabrillo Highway and Pescadero. There's 3 different parcels. For the next slide. Go to the next one too. So here it is, just there on the coast, just south of Bean Hollow Road, are where the parcels are located. The next one. You can see these 3 parcels here. This is showing the prime agricultural land. And these 3 parcels have quite a bit of ecological kind of activity. There's a lot of there's wetlands, marshlands. There are special status plants that have been identified on the site. And if you go to the next one, it'll show the locations of those. So you can see here all of the appropriate buffers from the different areas on site. The applicant came previously and received approval for to do 3 test wells, but they were not viable. So it has already been approved, but they're coming back for 2 new test locations. And these locations are still outside of these 100-foot buffers. You can see there. There's one on the very north of the site in a small area, and then there's one right near the entrance. The 2 kind of purple circles there. So these are the 2 new test wells. They're coming to try and find water in these locations, to make sure that they kind of exhaust everything that's outside of the buffer, and if those are not feasible, then they may have to come inside of that 100-foot buffer, but that's at a later time. And the next slide. So we looked at the project conformance with the general plan, LCP, and the PAD district regulations. The project meets the criteria with regards to fish, wildlife resources, visual quality, agricultural and sensitive habitats, visual resources. As we said, all development will be located out of the 100-foot buffer from riparian and marshland, and 50 feet from the bluff, and 50 feet from the special status kind of plant species that are on there. There's a chorus popcorn flower that it was identified on site by the biologist. And so all of the mitigation measures that were proposed by the biologist would be added to the conditions of approval to avoid impacts to those sensitive habitats and those plant species. So all of those have been carried over into this project as well. And the next one. So an ISMND was circulated at the previous meeting in 2023. It was certified by the Planning Commission and approved. We did identify the new project was consistent with what was reviewed under the previous CEQA document. So we prepared an addendum that shows that no new kind of substantial changes were proposed, and so no new mitigation measures were required. So the next one. And then the project went before the AAC in October, and it was approved on consent. There were no concerns from the Agricultural Advisory Committee on this project. So in conclusion, we recommend that the Planning Commission approve the Coastal Development Permit, the PAD permit, and ARC review based on the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval listed in Attachment A. So that concludes my presentation. Open up some questions.
I'm curious about like expected viability for the new wells, given a negative result from the last exploratory attempt. Is there confidence that
No, but we do have a representative here from the water company to see if they can provide some.
My name's Evan Wolf. I'm a geologist for Water Solutions. So I've been working on the project for about a year and a half now. And so the two wells that were previously drilled, they drilled three. So the first one was dry. Second one did 3/4 of a gallon a minute roughly. And the third one did 1.4 gallons a minute. In total, that doesn't meet the 2.5 gallons a minute required by the county for a residential development. And so, you know, in pursuit of finding water, there is evidence that there's water there. But if we go, you know, overall, we've been progressing to more and more water. And so we're hoping that at either of these two, the 100-foot buffer zone, that we'll actually be able to get the 2.5 gallons a minute required. So it's not like that we've had 3 dry holes completely. It's just we've had 3 holes that with a little more water each time, but not enough to meet the county standards.
the county standard is 2.5 gallons for a single drill?
Yeah, for
okay.
single family development. And
No. Sorry. You cannot like consolidate supplies from different wells. It would have to be a single.
my understanding is that we can, but based on the 2 wells that were drilled, that still doesn't meet the 2.5
Okay.
gallons a minute. So my understanding is because you know, we're allowed to keep 1 well from the previous permitting. And we want to keep the 1.4 gallons a
Yeah.
minute, and so if this other one can do
1.1, you're good.
then we should be okay.
Cool.
Is that correct?
My understanding is that you have to have just one. You can only permit 1 well.
Oh.
1 well
1
total.
well, yeah, total, and all the other ones would have to be dismantled and cleaned up and reseeded, and but that's my understanding from Public Works and
Yeah, I think you mean environmental health. So
Sorry.
just, yeah, to clarify for the commissioners, environmental health sets the rules for on-site water and wastewater disposal systems. So, and I'm not familiar with all the details of those rules. So I'll assume that Canoa is right, but further discussion with environmental health
Yeah,
would be needed.
My knowledge is, yes, we can consolidate 2 wells together. And I was under the understanding that because the previous round of wells was under a different permit application and different environmental health permit, then we'd be able to have 2 wells. But, you know, we're still hoping that we could just have one functioning well that does 2.5 gallons a minute. That's the plan. But
Yes, and we will confirm with environmental health to make sure.
Seems prudent.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
As a follow-up question to that is there just a standard what we are looking for? Because there's a possibility that there may be a residence built on this. So it has nothing to do with size of the residence.
No.
Is that correct?
Yeah, so based on the county standards, it's 2.5 gallons a minute for a single family residence. And if you build the ADU, I believe it goes to 3.5. And if you build multiple dwellings, then it continually escalates.
Okay.
There
So it
is-
does. It does.
Yes. and so-
Okay.
But there is no, and so they are limited by the quantity of water of what they could actually build.
Okay.
And so based on the track history so far, seems like it would only be a single family residence, and none of that is planned at the moment. It's, first step is find water. And then you
Finding
can
water.
plan the sewage, and then you can, draw up plans for a natural building. So
Okay.
at this time, we're in the first phase.
But water is only one thing that's needed for building a single family
Yes,
residence.
next would be septic system, and
Right.
there
Exactly.
is electricity down there, and yeah, so first step is typically water.
Okay. Okay. So in the neighborhood, are there open parcels with with nothing built on them, like undeveloped? Or
So immediately north of the site, there's multiple parcels that are fully developed. They're large acreages. Some of them may pre-exist. The 2.5 gallon a minute recommendation, my understanding is back in the 80s, it was a 0.5 gallon a minute. And so it's continually increased over time. And so some of them may have producing wells. I do know of one maybe a mile or two up the road that has a 5 gallon a minute well. So,
Okay.
so there is potential to get groundwater there. Some residences may exist on the well. Some may truck in water. I'm not sure exactly what they do, but pretty much everything to the north up to Bean Hollow Road is developed parcels. And then immediately south, there's a small 2,500 square foot parcel that's not developed, but then immediately south of that is another developed parcel. So it's pretty much sandwiched in between developed coastline parcels.
and wherever there's a residence, they all have wells. There's no
Yeah, there's
water supply coming there.
no, the public water supply does not
There's no
reach that
public
far.
water supply.
Yes, Commissioner Gupta, I'd just like to offer a little greater context around the surrounding area. This is a very rural area of the South Coast that is designated primarily for agriculture. These are lands, and within our agricultural district, property owners are allowed to have a single family residence, either in conjunction with the agricultural operation or just in terms of managing and overseeing the land.
Mhm.
But I just wanted to point that out because if they are successful in determining a water source, there'll be a lot of standards that will need to be addressed with regard to any future residential development. Not only will it need to avoid some of the sensitive habitat areas that have been shown in the maps to you today, it will need to be properly set back from the coastal bluff, of course, need to provide sufficient access and minimize impacts to any quality agricultural soils on the property. So this is really a first step in a longer process. And, that process of evaluating residential development will be a future item that this commission will consider. But from the property owner and applicant's perspective, the first step is just to determine whether or not there's sufficient water to support such development.
Okay, understood. Okay. So just because neighboring properties have good wells, does that have anything to do with viability on this?
Yes,
Parcel?
it's the same geologic formation.
Right.
And so we're drilling down into bedrock. The bedrock starts about 25 feet below the ground surface, and we have to seal out that upper 20 feet minimum with a cement sanitary seal. So all the water that we're sourcing is coming from a deep sandstone formation, and you're getting it from fractures in the rock. So you could drill over here and miss a fracture and pick up little to no water. But if you drill right here where it's, fracture intersects your borehole, then you could have enough water. So it's just kind of, pick and choose. You could be 20 feet away and get no water. And that's kind of what happened
In the
the
past.
first time around. They got a dry hole, then moved, I think, 200 feet away, and they got more water, and then moved 200 feet away, and they got more water. So
Okay,
this is kind of the way it works.
There's,
thank you.
is
Thank
there
you.
some sort of process by which you can determine what your odds are before you drill, or?
Yeah, so we did geophysical testing. It's non-invasive testing. It's called electrotelluric soundings, where they collect data from electrotelluric waves deep in the earth, and they send that to a company in Texas for processing. And so we actually did that for the two newly proposed locations, and the one on the very northern part of the site is the most viable. Both of them have an indication that there's water, but there's a better potential. It's not going to tell you how much water you have. It just kind of gives you depth intervals where you might get it.
What's the spatial resolution of that imaging?
The spatial resolution depends on how much you pay them. But they could do it very well, but because of the time thing. But the spatial resolution vertically, I believe, is on the order of 5 or 10 feet for what we did, and you kind of have a 50-foot radius from where you actually took the test.
I'm just curious at this point, but you pick a location, you do a scan, and it is anisotropic in pickup, or is it directional?
It's isotropic.
I
Thank
think,
you. I don't have any.
quick question, even though it hasn't been determined if the new wells exceed the 2.5 gallons a minute, what will happen to the other two that are there?
So that's
Would those be removed, or?
Yeah, they would have to be removed. Well, at least one of them. We'll sort out.
We'll confirm with the Environmental Health Department and let you guys know if they'll have to remove all of the wells. My understanding in the conditions of approval in the previous one, they can only keep one. Same with this, but we'll confirm for you.
Okay.
Just a question on topography. So do the wells remain above sea level?
Yes, the site, if I'll correct it, is about 40 feet above sea level.
Okay.
Above
Yeah.
And so the wellhead is above sea level, and the wellhead is supposed to stick up 18 inches above grade.
Mhm.
But, the rest of the well on the ground does go well below sea level.
Okay.
Yeah, we're probably going on over 300 feet, maybe more.
Hmm. And it's fresh water though? It's not?
So far, the other two wells, surprisingly, you're close to the ocean. Look at the ocean, you think that we're going to get seawater, but the salinity, total dissolved solids do not indicate that it's seawater.
Hmm.
And seawater is total dissolved solids over 10,000 parts per million, and we're well below that. We're probably on the order of 1,000 or less.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your questions. The applicant will now have 15 minutes for their presentation, if any. Does the applicant wish to speak?
I don't have a presentation. I think what you did was fine. The applicant is not present today. I'm not sure. I don't think they're on Zoom either, but I'm here to represent them.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions for the applicant? Any further questions? If not.
I had
we'll-
some questions for staff.
For staff?
Yeah, I don't know.
Please, go ahead.
So in reading through your report, the mitigation measure 2, is that to say the work cannot start until May 1st?
Yeah, so is that the bio section of the,
It was for the red-legged frog and
right?
garter snake.
Yes, yeah, those are all the recommendations from the biologist. So those are all conditions of approval that they'll have to abide by.
So there's no variance on that.
No.
And then I was curious about, there's an on-site monitor. So, and that appears to be, I don't know what oversight there is of the monitor, and it says that the contractor will designate a person. Is that part of their crew, or I mean, what?
So
I mean, I don't know what kind of.
So the person that or the company that prepared the biology report will they'll have a certified biologist perform that task. They'll contract with the company that did the bio report.
And then also, I noticed the property's up for sale. Should there be new owners, this approval of this wouldn't impact. I mean, if the new owners want to continue with this, wouldn't have to
We would assign the permit to the new owners.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you. The commission can discuss this item?
Public comment?
Oh, sorry. Public comment?
Chair Saran Kwan, I think unless there's further discussion amongst the commissioners, we're probably ready for a motion.
We're gonna open public.
Oh,
comment, I think.
yes, public comment.
Yes.
Forgive me.
Public
So-
My
comment?
mistake.
Thank you, Chair. We
Would-
do not have anybody wishing to speak in person, but at this time, if you wish to speak on item number 2, please raise your hand on Zoom. And there's nobody wishing to speak on Zoom.
Thank you. We will now
Oh,
close.
pardon, one hand just went up.
Oh,
And it is from a Zoom user. So please unmute your mic and begin speaking. You will have 5 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Ariel Mosley, and I'm listening in from El Granada, up on the coast. And I just wanted to make a comment that there's not a mic for that for some of the speakers, so I couldn't hear a lot of what was being said. Just for future reference. That's my only comment.
okay.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. We'll make sure that all the microphones are on for any future speakers.
Thank you. And with that, we have no further comments. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll now close public comment for item number 2 and begin commission discussion on this item. If there are any comments from the commission?
Through the chair, I just want to note maybe for speakers to have them just stand closer to the microphone at the podium. And that's probably what's not getting picked up.
Now I'm ready to make a motion. If commissioners don't have any comments. Is that the?
The second
the-
paragraph.
The second part?
Yes.
Okay. I propose that the planning commission approve the coastal development permit, planned agricultural district permit, and architectural review permit, county file number PLN 2025-00081, based on the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval listed in attachment A.
Second?
Commissioner Burrows,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Aye.
Commissioner Nugent,
Aye.
Chair Serrano Kwan.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
We will now move on to item number 3. Madam Clerk, please introduce the project and planner.
Applicant is Planning and Building, County of San Mateo, a public scoping session to solicit comment on the scope of an environmental impact report being prepared for the county's housing element rezoning program, and your project planner is Will Gibson.
Thank you, Angela. And good morning, commissioners. Good morning, Mr. Monowitz, Mr. Fox. As noted, this is an environmental scoping session to discuss the potential environmental impacts and to receive comment on the potential environmental impacts of the county's housing element rezoning program. I'm going to immediately turn it over to our consultants who are managing this portion of the project. Dana Ayers is here from MIG Incorporated, and we also have Mike Campbell on Zoom, who should be promoted to panelist because he may as well. Barb, that as well? Okay, thank you.
Could we make sure that you are closer to the mic?
Yeah,
Yeah. or
the former comment was noted.
The
I'm trying,
mic,
They
yeah.
don't pick up quite as well as we might
Thank you.
wish. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So Barbara and Mike, please accept the request to join as panelists. Who's presenting first, Mike?
Dana will be presenting first in chambers and then. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good morning, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Dana Ayers. If I'm not audible during the meeting, please just let me know. I'm much shorter than Will, so I'm closer to the mic, so that's not going to be an issue, but I still want to make sure I'm getting close enough. So I am here today, as Will introduced, to speak about, or more so to listen actually, with regard to the environmental analysis that MIG will be producing for the housing element rezoning. As was discussed, I'm joined here virtually by Mike Campbell and Barbara Beard, who are our environmental team members, team leads. I will be presenting the information to you and making the request for feedback. So just as an additional bit of background, as a reminder for the Planning Commission, we were here back in October to introduce the project to you. So I'll go over the next few slides relatively quickly. The housing element is a mandatory chapter of the general plan. It addresses housing capacity in unincorporated San Mateo County, and under state law needs to be updated on 8-year cycles. We are currently in the 6th cycle of housing element updates, which covers years 2023 to 2031. And in addition to the housing element meant to be adopted by the Board of Supervisors, housing elements under state law also have to be certified by the State Department of Housing and Community Development. Next slide, please. Components of the housing element. The housing element must demonstrate that there is enough capacity within the unincorporated area to accommodate the unincorporated county's allocation of regional housing need. If, through the preparation of the housing element, the county does not identify sufficient sites with existing zoning, then it needs to rezone sites to identify that it has sufficient capacity to achieve its allocation. Housing elements, as I mentioned, are to be adopted and certified on 8-year cycles. The county's housing element was adopted after the statutory deadline of January 31st of 2023. And so the county needs to should have been required to complete rezoning within 1 year. So we're currently past that timeline. So at this point, HCD is not certifying the certifying the housing element until the rezoning has been completed. So at this point, the state certification of the county's adopted housing element is contingent on the rezoning occurring. As a reminder, the rezoning program encompasses 4 areas within unincorporated San Mateo County, including parcels in Broadmoor, unincorporated Colma near the Colma BART station, near the coast on El Granada, and in the harbor industrial areas just south of Belmont. The housing element on its own does not specifically certify any residential development. It simply needs to identify that there is sufficient land, that there are sufficient programs in place for the county to be able to facilitate construction and approval of housing development through the 8-year cycle until 2031, at which point the cycle will start over again for the 7th. The rezoning program includes a commitment to a streamlined approval process for new multifamily housing in San Mateo County, particularly for these sites. Within the program, there is an obligation or a commitment to increase density on the Bayside parcels up to a maximum of 120 units an acre. So the rezoning program would allow development density up to a ceiling of 120 units per acre. On the coast side, the program identifies a maximum of 70 units per acre. In addition, the program identifies a commitment to modify the county's development standards to facilitate high-density residential development, particularly for these areas, which would limit parking requirements, would increase building height, and modify floor area ratios, again, for these 4 areas to be rezoned. Okay, so the reason why we are here today is really to focus on the California Environmental Quality Act and the requirement for the project to comply with CEQA. As part of any project that comes before a local jurisdiction, the local jurisdiction must analyze and disclose the potential environmental impacts of that project. The intent of CEQA is to prevent significant avoidable damage to the environment. It also encourages public participation and has various points throughout the process where the public is invited to comment. It's intended to facilitate transparency and to provide a platform for informed public decision-making. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the purpose of today's meeting is to, and this is an initial step in the preparation of the environmental impact analysis to analyze the housing element rezoning. Pursuant to CEQA, San Mateo County is the lead agency for this project. So the county is not only initiating the rezoning effort, the county is also leading the environmental analysis pursuant to the environmental state law. The county has decided to prepare an environmental impact report and is holding this scoping session under its lead agency responsibility to receive input on the content of the EIR to be prepared for the rezoning program. And just to differentiate, we are not necessarily discussing the merits of the rezoning program at this time. At this time, we are discussing just what should be within the scope of the analysis of the EIR. The rezoning program itself will be discussed at future noticed designated public hearings. Next slide, please. So the resource areas that will be analyzed in the EIR are specified in the Act and the Act's guidelines itself, and they range from aesthetics to transportation to population to utilities to greenhouse gas emissions and air quality. Each of these will be discussed and analyzed in the EIR that will be prepared for the housing element rezoning. So the EIR process begins with a notice of preparation. This is an announcement to the public that the county intends, as lead agency, to prepare an environmental impact report for the rezoning effort, or specifically for the rezoning effort in this case. The county published a notice of preparation, or NOP, on November 21st. Under the Act's provisions, the notice of preparation comment period extends for at least 30 days. The county is going to stretch that a little bit longer, so the comment period in this case will end on December 23rd. The comment period, as I mentioned, the NOP, as I mentioned, will help the county to identify the scope of the EIR. And so the information that we received today will help to identify or help to frame what the analysis in the draft EIR will be. And the draft EIR will, of course, evaluate the potential impacts of the rezoning program, but it will also be subject to its own 45-day review period when that document has been prepared. So the draft EIR, so right now we're in a first step of determining the scope of the EIR. Our team will next prepare the draft EIR after the comment period for the NOP has ended. We'll prepare the EIR in a draft form. That will circulate for its minimum 45-day period. And after that, any comments that are received on the draft EIR will be incorporated into a final EIR, and responses to the comments will also be incorporated into a final EIR. And if any changes come out of those responses, those will need to be incorporated into the final EIR. And prior to taking action on the rezoning project itself, the Board of Supervisors must certify that the final EIR, which encompasses the draft EIR, comments, responses to comments, and revisions, that the final EIR is an adequate and sufficient disclosure of the potential impacts of the rezoning. And again, state certification of the county's housing element hinges on the rezoning being approved. So we've shown this slide during our last presentation in October. Just reflecting where we are right now. We are currently in the process, as I said, of identifying the scope of the EIR and receiving comments from the public on the scope of the EIR. Future steps over the next few months will include the draft EIR itself, its comment period, and then of course rezoning public hearings. Today's scoping session is not the one and only opportunity the public will have to provide comments on the scope of the EIR in response to the NOP. In addition to today's meeting, the public is invited to provide written comments via email or first-class mail to city staff here in the room today. So any questions or additional comments after today's meetings can be directed to county staff. And again, any comments on the scope of the EIR, we will address within the EIR itself. But if there are any questions about the project itself, staff can answer those, or I can answer as well. So at this point, I'm happy to answer questions, but our main purpose in being here today is to listen to planning commissioners, to members of the public, again, on the scope of the EIR.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I'd just like to offer a couple additional comments from staff's perspective. As our presenter described, the environmental review here is intended to provide decision makers and the interested public with information about potential impacts. Today's discussion is not really a decision about whether or not the county should move forward with the proposed zoning amendments. That decision was made when the county adopted its housing element. We committed to pursuing this zoning amendment. However, there's a number of steps that will be required in order to gain the necessary approvals of the zoning amendment and to subsequently proceed with any development proposal. Those reviews and approvals include an action by the Planning Commission to recommend that the Board of Supervisors adopt the zoning amendments. Your consideration of that action will be informed by the environmental review that will take place. Should you, either way, whether you recommend the board approve the zoning amendment or not, the board will need to make a decision as to whether or not they believe the zoning amendment is consistent with our general plan and other requirements, and then submit that amendment to the California Coastal Commission as an amendment to our local coastal program. And the Coastal Commission will need to determine that the proposal is consistent with our local coastal program. And they will have the opportunity to suggest any modifications to the proposed zoning amendment that they think may be needed to comply with the local coastal program. The reason I bring this up is because I know that there are a lot of interested parties on this project, and I just want to make sure that everyone knows that there's going to be a number of opportunities in the future to discuss their concerns and opinions regarding the rezoning amendment. And I wanted to reiterate the purpose of today's meeting, which is really to make sure that our analysis of the potential environmental impacts addresses all relevant issues. And this is an opportunity for the public and for the commission to identify specific issues or concerns that you think really need to be addressed by the environmental review. So I just wanted to offer that larger context, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about it.
Any questions from the commissioners?
Yeah, I mean, I believe you covered this, but just to clarify, this is a rezoning doesn't mandate that the housing is built. It's just stating that there is an expedited process to develop these properties if approved.
Yes, that's correct.
And the other point that I don't think was what are precisely the consequences of failure to satisfy the housing element, failure to certify the.
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah, I'll start and then I'll let Will jump in if I'm incomplete. I think the main risk to the county is ineligibility for state grant funds. In addition, there's something known as the builder's remedy, which allows certain developments to proceed even if they're not consistent with the county's zoning requirements. And Will, did I miss any there?
No, I think those are the two main consequences. I think the one that is most likely for us in the immediate term is that there are certain state grants that require you to have a certified housing element in order to be eligible to receive those monies. And we are on the verge of entering cycles where we will start to lose some grant funding. Second is the builder's remedy, which, as Steve says, allows a developer in a jurisdiction that does not have a certified housing element to build projects that do not comply with zoning or general plan standards at all. So they can effectively ignore our zoning and build whatever they may choose. It has not seemed to be much of a risk for us because there are not too many opportunities apart from the sites we've already zoned for high density housing and the sites that we plan to zone for high density housing. There really are not that many opportunity areas that developers could do that, but that is a risk. The final one is a little bit unlikely, which is the state can actually step in and take away, and Tim Fox can speak to this as well, can take away our permitting authority from us should we not have a certified housing element as part of our adopted general plan. That's an unlikely consequence, and I'm not sure whether it's ever happened, but in theory, that is an ultimate consequence.
Is there anything related to the fact that we're already late? I mean, could these measures already be taken?
So the fact that we're late, in theory, we could face builders remedy projects now. We are already into that window where we could face that because we're behind. We're outside of the grace period that we were afforded to complete the rezonings. We think we'll be done with them quickly enough that we're unlikely to face that consequence. We think we will probably lose some grant funds in the upcoming grant cycle, but we hope to have this process done by the middle of next year, which is kind of the end of the fiscal year. And so that will be the only time that we face that consequence.
Thank you.
So it's not ideal, but we are moving as quickly as possible to minimize those potential impacts.
Thanks.
So when you say builder's remedy, they can, whichever developer, this is my understanding, whichever developer comes around, they can build anywhere?
It limited to housing. So the purpose of the law is to incentivize higher density housing. A developer, in theory, if they can find a site where they can manage and mitigate the environmental impacts of that development, because the environmental impacts, CEQA still applies to the builder's remedy. But we would not be able to disallow a project if it can meet the environmental standards. Then they could build a high density or a higher density residential project in areas where it would not otherwise necessarily be allowed within the unincorporated county only. We think those potential areas are quite limited, and they are areas where we would already prefer to see high density housing, but it remains a risk.
Follow on to that. Who, in the case of a builder's remedy and still conformance to CEQA, who would sign off on CEQA at that point?
I believe that the project proponent would have to. That's a really good question. I would defer to Mr. Fox. I don't know. I know it's Santa Monica faced it, so there are examples. They had many builders remedy projects, but I don't know how that worked. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't happen to know how that worked in the cases where people asserted builder's remedy, particularly in Southern California, but we can look into it for you.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I never considered that.
Are these the sites designated for rezoning? Are these all like set in stone? The actual geographic
At
sites, or is there, could another 6 acres somewhere else be?
Or is it, at this point, because we've already, so with the adoption of the housing element by the board, we selected, well, there are a couple of reasons why they're effectively set in stone at this point. The Planning Commission reviewed these proposed sites and densities, and the program recommended to the board that they adopt this program. The board did so, and then the state approved it. So the state has told us, yes, these satisfy the requirement. Should you rezone these, we will certify your housing element. In fact, the state said, your housing element is compliant with state law now. Just finish the rezoning and you'll be certified. If we go back, we have to go back through the entire process of not only Planning Commission review, board adoption, and resubmittal to the state, and potentially approval, but potentially not approval. But then we have to start the environmental review process again. Basically, we start from scratch. But the other point I would make is that we struggled mightily to find sites that were viable and that the state would accept, which are two distinct things. I would say we are under very strict constraints on how we are able to do this. The sites we are able to choose, where they can be, what they can, kind of the characteristics of them. We went round after round after round with the state trying to get approval. And these were ultimately the sites we almost were mandated to choose. So I don't think there's any possibility to kind of turn the train around. At this point, we're pretty far down the track.
Got it. Thank you.
Sir.
May I continue? Okay. I think I like that list of items that will be addressed in the EIR here. Just a couple of things that they may be included in some of these, but I just wanted to point out, and I think we have come up or brought these out in the past also. Like, is there some kind of traffic issues, traffic study that would be done or included in some manner or the other?
I believe that there will be an assessment of potential traffic issues. Dana, if you want to speak to that, yeah.
Sure. So there will be an analysis. CEQA includes, and the guidelines for implementing CEQA include an analysis for vehicle miles traveled. So the analysis that will be done for this project and for CEQA in general will focus on per person driving distances. the objective of that approach is it's kind of related to the state's goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the questions that the EIR analysis will focus on is, what is the distance that people are driving, and can that be reduced somehow? So it's more of an impact if people are driving long distances, and less of an impact if they're shorter.
Okay. So EIR only includes that, and it does not include any information about infrastructure for, like if there's housing that would, the areas that would be rezoned, there'll be housing built there, right? That's the ultimate goal.
Potentially, yes, right.
So there should be adequate transportation infrastructure also.
Yes, so the EIR analysis will include, and I'll invite Mike on the line to jump in if I miss anything. The EIR analysis will also include analysis of safety, and it will also include analysis of utilities infrastructure. There's a section that deals with utilities. So multiple layers of infrastructure.
So that may already fall into this utilities and.
Yes. So that slide I showed that had the 20 different subject areas, the checklist of questions that actually need to be addressed, each of them includes anywhere from 2 to 10 questions within each of those sub areas. So yes, those subject areas will be expanded upon in the analysis.
Okay, right, and yes, all right. So there are more subsections for each one of those items.
Yes, there are more specific questions within each of those categories.
Okay.
If I could jump in, Dana, for a minute. Thank you, members of the commission. Each of those subjects on that bullet list it has a list of questions, as Dana said, and those reflect basically thresholds of significance. So for each subject item, for example, public services is one. We will look at the availability of public services, whether implementing the project would create any kind of an impact on those things like police and fire and their ability to serve these proposed rezoning areas. Same thing for the subject area of utilities and service systems. We'll look at the capacity of existing sewer and water infrastructure, electrical and gas providers, things like that. We'll examine the capacity that exists and whether the project implementing these rezonings on these sites would represent a significant impact to those, and what additional infrastructure needs would have to be in place.
Okay. Yeah, that answers some of my questions. The last question that I have is, so how many units are we looking, housing units are we looking at in each of these 4 categories? I didn't get a feel for that.
Yeah, I don't remember the numbers per parcel or per area, but
yeah,
between the
like
between the 4, it needs to be somewhere around 160 to 170. Excuse me, not sorry, 960 to 970. So just under 1,000 units.
Right.
Somehow among
that
4.
number I saw.
Yeah.
But where are the bulk of them? Do we have any idea?
The bulk of them will probably be in Colma.
In Colma.
Because that has the highest density and the largest area.
Area there. Okay. So is that going to be our primary focus?
All of the areas will need to be analyzed equally.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the largest volume of units will be there, but the EIR needs to focus on the rezoning project. So if the only thing that makes this kind of, I think, a little bit abstract is that these areas are separate from each other. It's not as if we're looking at a single block that has 4 parcels on it and there's 4 buildings on a single block. It's easier to kind of understand that as that's a project, right? Here, we're looking at 4 areas, and they're distributed throughout the county, but they still in combination constitute a project. So no particular area is going to be analyzed more heavily than another.
Okay, thank you.
I would just add to that. I know we're not, we are talking specifically about the environmental impacts today and the nature of the environmental analysis, but it's important to note, yes, the board has adopted the rezoning program. The basic densities and the basic uses adopted with the housing element are driving this. However, each of the 4 different areas is in a distinct location with distinct characteristics. We assume as we write the regulations, we have the broad parameters of this project, but we are writing specific regulations for how development will be allowed and the types of development that we allowed for each of those 4 different areas. Because the ones on the Bayside in Colma and Broadmoor and the Harbor Industrial area are very similar and surrounded by similar uses, we assume those regulations are going to be very similar. The coastside parcels are quite different, and we can craft different standards to make sure that they fit with the character of the coastside and that community. So while we are analyzing them all as part of the same project from an environmental analysis standpoint, we do not anticipate that the exact standards that will apply to these sites are going to be the same across all of the different project areas, or the 4 parts of one project area, I suppose I should say.
Because right now, Colma population is so small, and I don't expect a whole bunch of people coming out and opposing anything. The population is 1,500. Colma. I lived right next to it, so I know that. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. All right. Thank you.
I've got a question. Will our certification be contingent on coastal commission approval of the coastal site?
Ultimately, potentially yes and no. So we can locally adopt, the board can locally adopt all of the zoning changes. The Bayside changes will take effect immediately. The coastal commission, there's no coastal commission certification required. To get the full program adopted, we will need to go through the coastal commission, which will take longer. However, we have discussed with HCD the potential that once we locally adopt all of the 4 zoning changes across the 4 sites, we will have enough units just with the Bayside sites to meet our RENA number. What HCD wants to see is about a 30% buffer above that to achieve certification. They have offered us the possibility of contingent certification pending the Coastal Commission's approval. So we will be certified until and unless the Coastal Commission rejected the zoning. So we would have a period where we would achieve certification, and then if the final step did not happen, they would come back and take it away.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I mean, a little silly, but I presume any grants granted during the provisional certification process would not be retroactively removed.
I assume not. I think once the grants are good,
Okay.
because the grants are conditioned on having a certified housing element at the time of the grant. So I think we would be okay for that grace period. Again, this is something we've discussed with HCD. They said this has happened before. We think it's a possibility. They haven't guaranteed it to us, but we think it's a good chance that they will offer us that. They're no happier than we are that any jurisdiction, ourselves included, remains uncertified. It doesn't help anyone.
Just, you mentioned the catering the developments to the different areas and to the coast side. So since I represent the coast side, I just noted, and I know hopefully these things will come through in the scoping session, but there's a lot of different maybe elements that aren't on there, like wildlife protections that I don't see on this list.
Yes,
So-
there will be biological assessment of the site to determine what wildlife may exist on it, also what kind of water and vegetation resources may exist on it, which of them may be sensitive, how to protect them. If so, that is definitely a part of the analysis.
Does that fall under biological resources?
I think that
or
all
is that separate?
falls under
Big
Yeah, I think that's,
Okay.
yeah, that's all captured in the one bucket, yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, so biological resources covers animals, plants, corridors, movements, birds. So yes, going back to Commissioner Gupta's question, the initial study or the analysis in the EIR, those are sort of high level topics, but within each one there are multiple questions. And the biological resources section does encompass the resources, specific resources you're asking about.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd also like to add that when we bring the final documents to you, including recommendation to certify the environmental review, our presentation to you will be accompanied by an analysis of the zoning changes, compliance with our local coastal program. And the policies of our local coastal program include specific protections for environmentally sensitive habitat, water quality, wetlands, and we will need to comply with those local coastal program policies. The CEQA document will provide the technical information that will enable us to do that very thorough analysis of whether or not we're meeting all the requirements of our local coastal program with respect to environmental protection, infrastructure, capacity, neighborhood compatibility, and the full, list of local coastal program requirements.
Thank you, Commissioners, for your questions. We will now open public comment for item number 3. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Chair. We did receive written correspondence for this item, which was circulated to the commission yesterday. And additionally, we received written correspondence after the deadline, which was not circulated, but it will be made part of the administrative record. And we do not have anybody wishing to speak in person, but we have 4 virtual hands raised on Zoom. You will have 5 minutes. I will first call on Sid Young, followed by Laurel Frischman.
Hi, I really just have one big question, and I thought there'd be more, coverage of each particular parcel under question here, but this is regarding the coast side. I live in Moss Beach, and I watched as the Cypress Point Mid-Penn housing project went through its various iterations, and now recently the neighbors have just gotten their notification they're going to start breaking ground in a few weeks, this December. And yet Highway 1 in Moss Beach, they haven't even started working on the Moss Beach corridor other than studies. And so that means the project could be completed before they ever get the turnouts or any kind of, the whole Moss Beach corridor project isn't due to be completed until 2030. So that means anybody that has to commute from that project is going to have a hard time, just like the rest of us that live in Moss Beach, pulling out onto Highway 1, waiting for traffic. There's been multiple accidents at my intersection, leaving and entering Cypress Avenue, where the Big Wave project comes and goes, or will be coming and going, not to mention the Seal Cove neighborhood and the mobile home, El Granada Mobile Home Park, or now known as Pillar Ridge Mobile Home Park. But, I think I heard you say something like 900 homes will be put in this rezoned or upzoned parcel in El Granada. And there's only 2 stoplights for the whole entire neighborhood of El Granada. We don't have any stoplights up in Moss Beach. But my whole point being that there's already 25,000 people living on the whole entire coast side. Every single project gets permitted in a vacuum. So every time Keaton or Hand builds a RV park, or down in Half Moon Bay, they permit a new hotel like the new Hyatt that's coming. or if we get mid-pen housing, 71 units. Nobody really looks at the overall global slow accretion of housing that's being implemented. And nobody really looks at how much more traffic is being provided onto the highway. And my main problem is, as a resident that's been there since 1988, there's no evacuation plan whatsoever, other than back in April, the Emergency Services Council wheeled out this thing, an AI evacuation plan, and they demonstrated it. It's called LADRIS. And it took 45 minutes to evacuate one tiny little neighborhood up in Hillsborough out to the El Camino Real. We all saw with horror how the people in Pacific Palisades coming out of that hillside neighborhood all got log jammed down at Sunset Boulevard because there was no way to get out. Once they got out of the neighborhood, it was just a log jam down on the main highway. So I really am very skeptical of more development, high density development, especially without any funding for, multiplying the highway traffic or mitigating any of the highway traffic. Because, like I said, every project gets approved in a vacuum. They don't worry about all the other projects up and down the coast that are adding to the accretion of all the traffic. And when it comes to evacuation planning, the coast side is never involved. They put it over at the San Mateo County Event Center. They never think of us. And it worries me to death that there's no emergency evacuation center to go to here on the coast. Last November, I had knee surgery. I got the warning that, everybody should evacuate. There's a tsunami alert. And of course, people did. I stayed in my house. I couldn't drive anyway, but people were going down, and it was a big log jam in Half Moon Bay. Nobody could get off the coast. It's a big concern. So I'd like to have somebody answer what you're going to do about traffic if you're going to put 900 more homes up in El Granada. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call on Laurel Frischman, followed by Melinda McNaughton.
Hi, this is Laurel Frischman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I want to reiterate a couple of things that may have already been covered. In part, Sid Young made some very good points about the evacuation plans, and also Mr. Campbell made comments about the research into the water and sewage capacity. So I'm basically, we don't have the infrastructure for adding high density housing here. And I know that those things will be looked at, but it will increase the traffic on Highway 1 and into the neighborhoods. And also we would ask you to consider focusing on areas already built up with evacuation plans. Evacuation issue is pretty much paramount in the minds of the people that live on this coast. The Big Wave area across the street already has empty office space that possibly could be converted and utilized. I don't know if that's been looked at. Building high density housing in our rural suburban areas along the coast will set up a precedent for more in our area. And we have limited space, infrastructure space like highway, etc. I understand that the California Department of Finance in 2023 audit does not show significant increase for housing needs up to 2060 in this area. I'm hoping that is being considered. The parcels are on seasonal wetland. California has lost 99% of its wetland, and it should not be legal to build on wetland, and thereby reducing water infiltration into our aquifers. This coast in California is part of a protected marine sanctuary, and where remains of the coastal land around all needs to be protected for the survival of our ecosystems that help us survive. At a time when the ecosystems and wildlife are suffering and environmental protections are being deregulated and reduced, I do not think the county can afford to let the state push them into building on what is left of our sensitive habitats. So I'm hoping that in reality, all of this is being considered for specifically the small area in El Granada, and possibly look for other options if it needs to be in this area, but not in the parcels that are currently being considered. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I will now call on Melinda McNaughton, followed by Jane.
Hi, thank you. And what I'm about to say, maybe you are not aware of, the council's not aware of, people in San Mateo County on the other side of the hill are not aware of. It applies to the intent of CEQA to prevent avoidable damage to the environment and absolutely needs to be addressed by the environmental review. My name is Melinda McNaughton, and I'm speaking as a volunteer with the Xerces Society. With their permission, I am sharing information from their scientific database and their recommendations for monarch butterfly protection efforts. I am reaching out because the monarch population that relies on Site 3111, the El Granada 6 parcels, requires urgent and informed protection. For decades, monarch butterflies have migrated from the inland western United States to the coast of California, seeking safe overwintering habitat. Site 3111 has been documented, verified overwintering location since 1988. Early records from Xerces describe these trees so heavily clustered with monarchs that they appeared orange, a striking reminder of what this site once supported. Each year, monarchs arrive in mid-fall and depend on protective trees to shelter them throughout the winter months of October through February. During this time, they mate and disperse inland to lay eggs, rebuilding populations throughout the United States. These overwintering groves are not optional. They are essential for the species' survival. When habitat is removed or altered, monarchs experience stress, starvation, and energy depletion, while searching for new refuge, decreasing their already fragile chance of survival. Monarchs return to the same overwintering spots year after year, guided by topography and weather cues. When a site is protected, they stay making monitoring reliable and long-term protection efforts highly worthwhile. 50 years ago, Site 3111 hosted monarchs in the thousands. Today, numbers are drastically reduced. The Xerces Society recommends this site be protected, formally assessed, and enhanced to restore its value to migrating monarchs. Communities that take such action often see overwhelming local support, along with increased ecological and community value. Resources are available to assist with this important work, and I assume it would also add economic and tourist value. Local residents already serve as dedicated community scientists, eagerly watching for the monarchs' return and reporting data that help track their arrival and population trends. Their volunteer participation underscores how deeply this community values the monarchs and how invested we are in safeguarding their future. Unfortunately, monarch butterflies are now in serious decline, threatened by habitat loss and pesticide pollution. Their population has fallen from millions in the 1980s to fewer than 8,000 along the entire California coast today. With numbers this low, every single wintering site is critical, and the protection of each monarch matters. The species is currently a candidate listing under the Endangered Species Act. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has recommended an endangered species designation. Given this reality, the Xerces Society recommends deferring any decisions that may impact Site 3111 until additional monarch-specific input can be gathered. They further recommend conducting a biological study and ensuring that monarch protection measures are applied to this area. I respectfully urge you to consider the gravity of this situation. Protecting Site 3111 is not only scientifically sound decision, it is profound opportunity, sorry, I'm getting all verklempt here, for our community to safeguard an irreplaceable part of El Granada and California's national heritage. The monarchs have returned to this place for generations. Let's ensure that they can continue to do so. I ask our board not to approve the rezoning for this project. I would suggest the Big Wave area that has a ton of empty office spaces that could be converted. Thank you for your time and for your thoughtful consideration on this.
Thank you. And we have 2 hands left. So if anybody else would like to speak, please raise your hand now. I will call on Jane, followed by Dan Haggerty. Jane, go ahead.
Unmute. Hi, I hope you can hear me. Thank you for the discussion. I found it very informative. I'd also like to talk about an endangered species, and that is the coastal residents who live here. We know that we have an inability to get out in an emergency, and we know that 8 people died in the Palisades fire because they could not get out of a terrain very similar to ours. We know that most people on the coast side say, head to the harbor if there's a fire. The choke point along the whole of Highway 1 is the harbor. And to put this particular neighborhood with this more people at our very choke point is a huge mistake. If we use Wavecrest and they're already on the west side, then we wouldn't have that much traffic choking. I have a few comments and I'll get back to the environment. The builder's remedy is one of the most egregious laws I have ever heard of. It says if I lose a court case, then I can turn around and do whatever I want. I find that, I hope if that's the way it goes, if I'm ever in a court case, I have that kind of ruling in my favor. But we know, yes, I said before, about 30% of the homes on the coast side are owned by seniors, and the peak of the boomer generation will age out in 10 to 15 years. If we look at 30% of the housing stock coming available in 10 years, then a 30-year mortgage at $1 million plus might not be as advantageous to people as we're presenting it to be. So I did want to get back to talking about the environment. Melinda mentioned the butterflies, and also I know about the shorebirds. One of the arguments about not letting your dog chase shorebirds is because the ratio of food intake to the energy they need to migrate can easily damage their survival. It's the same thing with the migratory monarchs. They're flying all the way to Mexico. They have to have a resting place in a temperate climate, and that is the coastal areas. We have already seen a real decline. We're seeing a huge decline in the owl population now because people are using poisons. It's one of the explanations. We're seeing in all throughout California an increase in mange because higher populations do things like they use rat poisons and so forth. I do have an early letter that was written. It was the first letter from Jacques Cousteau to promote his work on the oceans. And one of the things he described in great detail is if the oceans die, the stench of the dead animals there will make it very difficult to breathe on the coast side. What we just found out recently is the Pacific Ocean is acidifying faster than any other ocean on the planet. I don't know how long we can bury our heads in the sand about the environmental catastrophes that are on our doorstep. These things can turn within a moment. We've always had the luxury of it's been a slow acceleration, but it's like they say about going bankrupt. You know, it starts slow and it ends up going fast. So I so appreciate you taking our input. I also think as far as the harbor, I know during 9/11, people used ferries to get out of the area. We need to be able to have our access to the harbor, even as an escape route, should we have an evacuation problem. Anyway, thank you so very much for listening to our concerns. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call on Dan Haggerty, followed by Zoom user. Dan, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, Dan Haggerty, 35-year resident of El Granada, 13 years on the MCC, which I'm no longer on. Thank you for letting me give some comments this morning. The proposal for rezoning in El Granada is located where there are seasonal wetlands. I sent some photos via email this morning of water in the area. As it was mentioned, by the way, I agree with many of the previous speakers, Melinda, Jane, with their concerns. Yes, there's monarch butterfly habitat, which I personally witnessed. The California red-legged frog, which is also a California species of special concern, has a population here and a few known satellite populations nearby. Also, with the rezoning, larger buildings versus the way Daniel Burnham planned this area for single-family homes, the contrast of the amount of water that will be diverted instead of going into the aquifers. The riparian vegetation, presence of sedges, rushes, and other wetland indicators provide a climatic buffer and is a carbon sink. Based on all this knowledge, the EIR must include a thorough, rigorous, and based on the best available scientific information of all of these concerns. I want to go on and say that I'm not comfortable that this rezoning program in this area is based on threats of undesirable consequences. And all of this is based on false information of growth projections. And this just doesn't, I have never heard that it's been acknowledged. It should be. There should be some pushback from the county on this. In 2023, the California Department of Finance refuted the numbers that were provided by the housing department. Their projections are that population growth will be flat through 2060. So this is a very sensitive area of El Granada, and all of the concerns that were given earlier should be considered. As far as the EIR, I understand, that's what we're here to. You received comments from us. What should be included in the EIR? So I think I'll have to stop here. Talk to many other residents in the area, and they all have high concerns, but they are forced to work, and it's very difficult to participate in this. I'd also like to make sure that all of the written comments are publicly available for the community members to read what our neighbors are saying. Yeah, this is a heavy move, and you can be certain that the community will be following this closely. So yeah, please look at the photos that were sent via email this morning, and just make sure that this EIR, everything that's concerned, has a thorough, rigorous, and based on best available scientific information. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call on our last speaker, Zoom user. Please state your name for the record.
Hello again, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Ariel Mosley. Again, I spoke earlier about the mic and it's been working great. Thank you guys. Also, thank you for letting me speak on this matter. I want to just reiterate my agreement with previous speakers, but also add that I am CERT qualified, and CERT stands for Coastside Emergency Response Team. We work with the fire department to prepare for emergencies on the coast side. And many comparisons have been made with the coast side and the small town of Lahaina on Maui, and which we saw was utterly devastated by a fire in 2023. Also, the Pacific Palisades fire has been mentioned. Just having 2 lanes for egress out of this area is extremely threatening. As part of the CERT training, we are suggested to, quote unquote, shelter in place to try and keep that highway open for emergency vehicles. So that exacerbates any kind of plan for an emergency evacuation on the coast side. There's also no police on the coast. I want to make sure everyone is aware of that. We just have a sheriff's substation. And so adding an entire large amount of people in a small area will further tax that system. I think that this is this planning, this permitting first before we figure out emergency plans for traffic, emergency plans for law enforcement, is kind of out of order. It seems sort of like once you give permission, then this thing will take a life of its own, and they will never have to address these other extremely important and glaring infrastructure issues. Let's see, did I think anything else? Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thanks for listening. Please consider this, even though we have land over here, it doesn't make it the right place. And to have to give a permit now and then have it fall apart later, so we have to start over again, why not just start over again? Thanks for listening.
Thank you. And with that, Mr. Chair, we have no further comment for item number 3.
With permission of the chair, I would just quickly like to respond to 2 items. One commenter was of the impression that the 960 units we're required to accommodate through our rezoning program would all be located in El Granada. I think the commissioners know that is not the case. That's the total spread across the 4 sites, and as our earlier presenter indicated, we believe a majority of those units will be on the bay side. And then just in response to the last speaker, there is no permit in front of the commission today, as you know. We're just scoping the potential environmental impacts of the rezoning program. And I want to thank the speakers for their input. I think they provided some valuable information, and many of the issues they've raised will indeed be analyzed by the EIR. And they will also have an opportunity to review and comment on that analysis before it's presented to the commission for adoption. So that concludes my response to comments.
Thank you for the clarification, Director Monowitz. Any other comments, questions?
Yes, one of the correspondence that came, and also the speakers were excuse me, were referring to sensitive habitat, and some of these are protected lands. Could you address that issue?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Environmentally sensitive habitat areas, which essentially provide habitat for rare, unique, and endangered species, are protected by our local coastal program. I think There were some particular habitat concerns mentioned for the El Granada site, including potential overwintering habitat for monarch butterfly, potential seasonal wetlands, which could provide habitat for protected species like the California red-legged frog, and the potential for those habitat and species to exist on the site, and the consequences of the rezoning program on these habitat areas will certainly be an issue that will need to be evaluated by the EIR.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now close public comment for item number 3. There is no action on this item, but are there any final comments from the commission?
Yeah, so the next time this matter will be coming before the body is at the draft EIR stage?
Yes, we will need to prepare the actual text of the zoning amendments. So the next time the matter will be before the commission, it will not only include the draft EIR, but also the proposed text amendments to the zoning.
And also for outside this body, the next 2 review stages are first at the Board of Supervisors for a final approval of the finalized EIR, and then again at the Coastal Commission.
Yes, that is correct. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but yes, the Board of Supervisors will need to certify the environmental impact report. They will also need to approve the zoning amendments for submittal to the Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission's action will not include an action on our CEQA document. However, their process is considered to be the functional equivalent of CEQA. So they will independently make a determination as to whether or not the county sufficiently addressed the environmental impacts posed by the proposed changes.
Steve, if I could just add, we do intend to go back to the Mid-Coast Community Council, which is very specifically interested in the coastal sites for an update as we move forward. So that will be part of the process as we move toward the Planning Commission and the board, that we updates to the coast sites specifically. And if there are major changes or if there are major milestones that we think require, it may come back to your commission for interim updates as well. There's no specific plan, but that may be necessary as we determine more how the regulations will play out and what the environmental analysis is showing us.
And lastly, the documents that were submitted this morning that are not yet available will be made available on this meeting's agenda page.
Yes, that's correct. So all correspondence that was submitted with regard to this meeting will be posted on the meeting on the website for this meeting agenda.
And in addition, there is a website specifically for the Housing Element Rezoning Program, which is available through the county's Planning and Building Department website. It will have updates on all public input opportunities, all the meetings that we have, the environmental review process, the documents that have been produced. They will all be available there. And there is a mailing list sign up that members of the public and the commission and whoever else may choose can sign up to get periodic updates as we move forward.
I just wanted to point out a quick thing that struck me when I read the comments, and having put my eyes on the El Granada parcel a number of times. All the comments were totally credible about number one, the fire danger, and also the butterfly, the monarch butterfly habitat. Well, the property is it's flat in the front and it goes up the hill where it's pretty heavily wooded, where I assume the monarch habitat is, and it's also the huge fire damage potential area. So how do you balance, mitigating the fire and then keeping the monarch? That's a challenge you're going to have with this project. And it just kind of points out the whole complexity of this property compared to the others.
Thank you, Mr. Monowitz. Now I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. Well, first, with regard to the next meeting, I'm sorry, correspondence first, item 4. We received a few letters regarding parking for Surfers Beach on the coast. There's been a number of actions that have sparked the interest of the community about potential impacts to beach access parking for Surfers Beach. The first project that already has come before the Planning Commission that has the potential to impact access to Surfers Beach is the Highway 1 Rehabilitation Project underway by Caltrans. I
just wanted to ask one thing before you leave. When the next time you bring this matter before us, because we've been asked a number of questions about it, could you do a breakdown of how many sites how many additional residents per site? Because I think that's just been a touch point that
Absolutely. We can do
sorry
what the densities are for the sites in the various areas, the maximum densities, what that's likely to produce. And we do want to reiterate, there's no development proposed. We don't anticipate any development happening in the near future, but this would be a change in the maximum that is allowed. It's an important point to remember. The sites on the coast are zoned for residential development. One of them is for medium-high residential development. The others are for single family. The scrutiny that we are placing on these sites is far greater than what would be required to actually just develop them as a residential now, because they are already zoned for that. So I do think that's something to remember, is this is a change in the allowed density on those sites, but the allowed use is already residential. They just haven't been built, and we don't foresee, development is very slow in this county. We do not foresee anything immediate, but we'll bring back the breakdown with all of the details on what actually the outcomes would be under these maximum zonings.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. Good presentation.
I'll return to item 4 with the permission of the chair.
Yes.
Okay, so the correspondence about parking for Surfers Beach, raises concern about the loss of parking associated with the Caltrans Highway 1 Rehabilitation Project. That project was appealed to the California Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission attached conditions to that permit that require Caltrans to mitigate the loss of coastal access parking by providing additional parking in the vicinity of Surfers Beach. The Harbor District owns some property in the vicinity of Surfers Beach and is interested in building parking that would not only support the harbor uses, but would also provide public access parking. There's been a lot of concerns expressed by the community about that project. That project is conceptual only at this point. There, to my knowledge, is no firm commitment to move forward with it, nor am I aware that the Coastal Commission has identified that new parking lot proposed by the Harbor District will be acceptable to the Coastal Commission. So that is still an ongoing discussion. The other key point that's made in the correspondence that was sent to the commission and others was that there's seems to be a number of people who believe that the need for coastal access parking at Surfers Beach would be best addressed by using the RV lot that exists on the west side of Highway 1 near Surfers Beach. And from the county's perspective, we would be supportive of maximizing public access at that location. So I understand the points that have been raised in these letters, and those conversations will continue to occur. if the commissioners have any question about what's happening out there, I'm happy to try and answer that. Seeing none, I'll move on to item 5. Our next meeting will be on January 14th. There's no study session planned. As it is tradition, we will be scheduling an election of the chair and vice chair of this commission. And then we've got 2 other items tentatively on the agenda. We have the proposed updates to the Coastside Design Review Guidelines. This is a project that staff has been working collaboratively with the Coastside Design Review Commission for a number of months to make certain changes desired by the community. And so we'll be happy to bring that forward for your consideration. And the other item is an appeal of an approval of a new residence that's located on the corner of 15th Street and East Avenue in Montera. Because 15th Street is an undeveloped right-of-way, the project necessitates a new approximately 300-foot-long driveway from 14th Street to access the project site. And I think there's concerns from the community about that development. Thus, you'll be considering an appeal of that approval. Moving on to the director's report. Following up on the scoping meeting, I wanted to let you know that after this meeting, the county executive and I will be meeting with staff of the State Housing and Community Development Department. They continue to be concerned about the status of our housing element not being certified, and they're pushing hard for us to complete the rezoning as quickly as possible. So I am prepared to explain to them some of the issues that need to be further studied before we can complete the rezoning. And my hope is that they will understand the challenges we face in terms of completing the rezoning. We too desire to get it done as quickly as possible, but we're committed to doing it right. And as you heard today, there are a lot of legitimate issues that need to be analyzed and addressed. So I'll be happy to update the commissioners on any results that come out of the meeting today at our next meeting. I wanted to update you on some recent Board of Supervisors decisions. They approved the affordable housing agreement for the Johns Housing Project. This was an additional housing unit on a parcel in the South Coast, not far from where we heard about the test well project today. Because you're only allowed one residence on existing agricultural parcel, that we do allow for additional units to be developed, but only if they are serving farm workers or they are designated and deed restricted for affordable housing. So this project added a new unit, and that unit is required to be rented out at rates that are affordable to low to middle income individuals, and the affordability agreement approved by the board ensures that's the way it will be used. The board also just approved a contract for a multi-jurisdictional effort to update the Nexus study we rely upon for our housing impact fee. So new development has an impact on the need for housing, and we offset that impact by requiring certain types of new development to contribute an in lieu fee, which is then put into an account that is used to build additional housing. Our existing housing impact fee was put in place a number of years ago. Circumstances have changed, So we're updating that report to make sure that we are collecting an appropriate amount to offset the actual impacts of new development. As far as upcoming Board of Supervisors hearings, on January 27th in the new year, we will be presenting them with the update to the building code. So the California Building Code is updated on a triennial cycle. So every 3 years, the code gets updated, and local governments are required to adopt the new building code. And in conjunction with adopting the new building code, we update our building regulations, which specify the administrative procedures under which we carry out our review of new development projects to ensure that they comply with building code requirements. So that will be on the January 27th board meeting, as will be a contract with the city of San Carlos to continue the code compliance services that the county provides for the city. We've been doing that for a number of years, and this is the existing contract we have in place is due to expire, so we'll be renewing and updating that contract. And then additionally at that meeting, the board will be considering a recommendation to contribute a certain amount of funds to the Peninsula Open Space Trust for purposes of securing an agricultural conservation easement on a property in Pescadero. This easement is required for the county to fulfill its mitigation obligations for the new Pescadero Fire Station. So the new Pescadero Fire Station will be constructed on agricultural land, and in order to offset the loss of that agricultural land, the county is securing an agricultural easement that will ensure a greater area of land than will be impacted by the fire station will be preserved for agricultural use in perpetuity. And I believe that concludes my director's report. I'd be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
Any questions, please?
Yes. One of the speakers had touched upon this Cypress Point. You have any update on that development?
Yes. So building permits for the Cypress Point project are ready to be issued. They intend to initiate site preparation activities in the next few months. Thus, they have sent a courtesy notice to the surrounding property owners, and we will be, monitoring that development closely to ensure compliance with all the relevant conditions of approval.
Okay.
And one of the things that will need to happen before MidPen can place any combustible materials on the site is we will need to complete the installation of the no parking signs along Carlos Street, and that is planned to occur early in the new year.
And the completion is what the date of completion is what the public speaker mentioned? Something
Oh, so I think the speaker was talking about the Moss Beach Highway 1 project.
Oh, I see.
And she raised the concern that the Cypress Point project will be constructed before the Highway 1 improvements are completed, which is an accurate statement.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments from the commission? No, hearing none, we adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and happy holidays to you all.
Happy holidays, everyone.